A millionaire meets his ex with 4 children, identical to him. But what she reveals next silences the entire room. The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel, in the heart of Chicago's Gold Coast, shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers. It was a black-tie charity gala, where the city's elite flaunted tailored tuxedos and designer gowns, all while pretending to care deeply about the cause. Funding inner-city schools. Ethan Caldwell, a 38-year-old tycoon who'd built a fortune in agricultural tech, adjusted his silk tie while flashing a practiced smile at a venture capitalist. He was a master at seeming engaged, but his mind was already mapping out his company's next big move. "Where's Megan?" asked Mark Sullivan, one of Ethan's board members, with a thinly veiled curiosity. "Caught up at the clinic," Ethan replied, grateful for the excuse. The truth was, Megan, his girlfriend of 2 years, had a jealous streak that bordered on obsession, and he dodged another argument by coming alone. A waiter glided by with a tray of champagne, and Ethan grabbed a flute, his eyes scanning the crowded room. Then the world seemed to freeze. There she was, Sophie, his ex-wife, from whom he'd parted ways 5 years ago. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant in its understated way, her auburn hair falling in loose waves, a stark contrast to the overly adorned women around her. But it wasn't Sophie who made Ethan choke on his champagne. Beside her, 4 identical boys, maybe 4 years old, were giggling and nudging each other. 4 faces that were mirror images of his own childhood photos. Hazel eyes, thick brows, even the dimple in the chin he'd inherited from his grandfather. Ethan felt the floor vanish beneath him. "You okay, Caldwell?" Mark asked, noticing his pallor. Ethan didn't answer, just muttered an "excuse me," and started weaving through the crowd, drawn forward by an invisible force. Sophie spotted him approaching and stiffened. She knelt, whispering to the boys who stopped and turned in unison, studying Ethan with a mix of curiosity and wariness. 4 pairs of identical eyes sized him up, and Ethan's pulse raced. One boy with a slightly crooked red tie tugged at Sophie's dress. "Mom, who's that guy?" Another, with a smudge of frosting on his cheek, tilted his head. "He looks like us." Ethan stopped a few feet away, the gala's chatter fading to a dull hum. "Sophie," he said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." She stood tall, resting her hands protectively on 2 of the boys' shoulders. "Ethan, I knew this day would come." He swallowed hard, unable to tear his eyes from the kids. "Are they mine?" he asked, though their faces screamed the answer. "Yes," Sophie said firmly. "This is Liam with the red tie, Noah in green, Elijah in grey, and Owen in blue." The smallest, Owen, peeked from behind her, his eyes wide. A camera flashed nearby, someone snapping the moment. Ethan barely noticed, his world now orbiting these 5 people. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice low, torn between anger and a desperate need to understand. Before Sophie could answer, Ethan caught movement at the ballroom's entrance. Megan had arrived, her eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. He steered Sophie and the boys to a quieter corner, his heart pounding. "I need to know everything," he said, struggling to stay calm. Sophie pointed to each boy, her voice steady. "Liam's the leader, always taking charge. Noah's the tinkerer, always taking things apart. Elijah's the dreamer, loves to draw. And Owen, he's a whirlwind." As if on cue, Owen spun in a circle, giggling. Ethan soaked in every word, equal parts fascinated and overwhelmed. "I tried to reach you," Sophie said, a hint of bitterness in her tone. "I called your office dozens of times, sent letters. They all came back. Your team shut me out." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. I never got anything." Liam interrupted, tugging at Sophie's sleeve. "Mom, I'm hungry." Owen echoed. "Me too." Ethan waved over a waiter. "Can you take the kids to see the dessert table? There's a chocolate fountain." With Sophie's nod, the boys followed the waiter, casting curious glances back. Alone, Ethan faced Sophie. "You named them by yourself?" She crossed her arms. "I had to. It was a tough pregnancy, Ethan. Quadruplets aren't exactly a walk in the park. I managed alone." He ran a hand through his hair, stunned. "I would have helped, Sophie. You know that." She gave a humorless laugh. "Really, because during our divorce you made it clear your company came first." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. a text from Megan. "Where are you? I'm at the entrance." He dimmed the screen, but not before Sophie saw the name. "The girlfriend?" she asked, her tone dry. "Does she know you've got 4 kids?" "No," Ethan admitted, "because I didn't know either until 10 minutes ago." Sophie's gaze softened, but only briefly. "Well, they deserve more than a dad who's only half in." Ethan felt the sting of her words. "I never said I didn't want them. How could I when I didn't even know they existed?" A commotion drew his attention. The boys returned, faces smeared with chocolate, pointing excitedly at an ice sculpture in the ballroom's center. Then Megan appeared, stunning in a silver gown, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "There you are, babe," she said, her voice syrupy. Her gaze landed on Sophie and the boys, and her expression hardened. "Who are they?" Before Ethan could answer, Liam stepped forward, chin up. "I'm Liam Caldwell. These are my brothers." The surname hit Megan like a slap. "Caldwell?" she repeated, glaring at Ethan. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ethan felt the room spin. His carefully curated life was unraveling. The air in the secluded corner of the ballroom felt thick, heavy with unspoken words and raw emotions. Ethan Caldwell, still reeling from the bombshell that he was a father to 4 identical boys, felt Megan's piercing stare, demanding answers he was only beginning to piece together. Sophie stood firm, arms crossed, her eyes flicking between her sons and the woman who now filled the role she once had. Liam, proud of his bold introduction, stood tall, but his brothers, Noah, Elijah, and Owen, were distracted by the glittering ice sculpture. "Caldwell?" Megan repeated, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Ethan, what the hell is going on?" He opened his mouth, but Owen, chocolate still smudged on his face, pointed at Megan and said loudly, "Mom, who's this lady?" The word "mom" aimed at Sophie made Megan flinch as if slapped. Her eyes narrowed, and she turned to Ethan, nails digging into her palms. "Your kids?" Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure as the ballroom seemed to close in. "Megan, not here. Let's talk privately." But she wasn't backing down. "No, Ethan, I deserve answers now. Who is she, and why do these kids have your last name?" Sophie stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "I'm Sophie, Ethan's ex-wife. These are our sons, Liam, Noah, Elijah, and Owen." The word "our" landed like a thunderclap. Megan let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Ex-wife? Kids? This is some sick prank, right?" Before things could spiral further, Ethan noticed a man near a pillar, subtly aiming a phone their way, the faint flash confirming he was taking pictures. He grabbed Megan's arm gently but firmly. "We're settling this outside. Now." She yanked free, her eyes blazing. "I'm not done, Ethan. This isn't over." Without waiting for a reply, she stormed toward the exit, her silver gown catching the light like armor. Sophie watched, her face unreadable, but Ethan caught the slight tremble in her hands. "She always that intense?" she asked, a touch of sarcasm in her voice. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not always. But that's not the point now. Sophie, I need the full story. Why didn't you push harder? Why let 5 years pass without telling me?" Before she could answer, Elijah, the quietest of the 4, approached, clutching a napkin with a sketch scribbled in pen, likely swiped from a waiter. He handed it to Ethan hesitantly. A simple drawing of 5 stick figures, 4 small and 1 tall, holding hands. "Is that you?" Elijah asked, barely above a whisper. Ethan studied the sketch, and something inside him cracked. He crouched to Elijah's level. "Yeah, that's me. And you 4, right?" Elijah nodded, his eyes shining. "I like drawing families." Sophie cleared her throat, visibly moved but holding it together. "Ethan, I tried. After we split, I was pregnant with quadruplets. It was high risk. I barely had the strength to take care of myself, let alone chase someone who seemed done with me." Ethan wanted to argue, but the words stuck. During the divorce, he'd been consumed by his company's growth, jetting between Midwest farms and Silicon Valley pitches, barely sparing Sophie a thought. He'd thought love could wait, that family could be postponed. Now, staring at those 4 faces, he saw the cost of his priorities. "I would have come back," he said, his voice rough. "If I'd known, Sophie, I would have come back." She studied him, weighing his words. "Maybe. But this isn't about what could have been. It's about them. Liam, Noah, Elijah, and Owen deserve a dad who shows up, not one who fits them into his schedule. Before he could reply, his phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. A photo of him crouching with Elijah, Sophie, and the other boys in the background. The caption read, "Tech mogul hiding a family. How much is this worth?" Ethan's stomach dropped. He showed Sophie the screen and her face paled. "This'll turn into a circus," she whispered, her eyes on the boys, now laughing as they tried to sneak more chocolate from the fountain. "They can't be dragged into this." Ethan gripped his phone, anger rising. "No one's touching my kids, I swear." He fired off a text to Jack Reynolds, his head of security. "Trace this number. Now." Sophie looked at him, surprised by the steel in his voice. "You mean that, don't you?" He nodded, his gaze locked on the boys. More than anything. The night ended with Ethan escorting Sophie and the boys to her car, a beat-up Honda CR-V that seemed too small for such a big family. He jotted down her address, promising to visit the next day. Back in the ballroom, Megan was gone, but her tension lingered. In the elevator to his Gold Coast penthouse, Ethan stood in silence, the night's weight settling on him. He opened his phone's gallery and stared at a photo he'd snapped of the boys before they left. 4 identical grins, each echoing his own childhood pictures. His sons. The word felt surreal, but also like a duty he couldn't ignore. The next morning, Jack arrived at the penthouse before dawn, his face grim. The photos came from someone at the gala. Professional quality, even from a phone. We're cross-referencing the guest list with known photographers. Ethan paced, Lake Michigan glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Find this guy, no one threatens my family." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Family, huh? That's new." Ethan stopped, meeting his friend's gaze. "Yeah, and it's everything now." His phone rang, Sophie's name on the screen. He answered instantly. "Ethan, there's a photographer outside my building," she said, her voice hushed, as if afraid of being overheard. "The boys haven't noticed. They're playing, but I'm scared." Ethan's chest tightened. "Stay put. I'm coming with security." He hung up, grabbing his keys. "Jack, get a team. We're moving." At Sophie's building, a modest brick complex in Lincoln Park, Ethan spotted the photographer before parking, a guy in a baseball cap lurking behind a tree with a telephoto lens. Jack and another guard approached, and the man bolted but was quickly pinned. Sophie opened her apartment door, relief washing over her face. "Thanks for coming so fast," she said, letting him in. The apartment was small but warm, cluttered with toys, Elijah's drawings taped to the walls, and the scent of fresh coffee. Laughter echoed from the hallway. "They're in their room," Sophie explained. "I told them their dad was coming today." Ethan hesitated. "What do they think about that?" Sophie gave a bittersweet smile. "Liam's ready to grill you. Noah can't wait to show you his upgraded toy car. Elijah's working on a drawing for you. And Owen, he just wants to know if you play baseball." Ethan chuckled, the tension easing. "I played in high school. Might be rusty, though." They paused at the boys' bedroom door, covered in colorful sketches. Ethan recognized Elijah's delicate style instantly. "I never meant to keep them from you," Sophie said softly. "I need you to know that." Before he could respond, the door swung open and Owen appeared, eyes sparkling. "You're here, guys, he's here," he yelled, sprinting to fetch his brothers. The room was organized chaos, bunk beds, toys strewn about, walls plastered with art. Liam approached first, arms crossed like a tiny judge. "You staying with us now, or are you going to disappear again?" The question hit Ethan hard. He crouched, meeting Liam's eyes. "I didn't know about you before, Liam, but now that I do, I'm not going anywhere." Liam seemed to weigh the answer, while Noah held up a toy car with duct-taped parts. "Check out what I built. Want to fix it with me?" Ethan grinned, his heart lighter. "Absolutely." Just then, his phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Trouble at the company. Urgent board meeting. Rumors about you are spreading." Ethan showed Sophie the message, and her brow furrowed. "Megan?" Ethan shook his head. "Maybe. Or someone bigger. But I won't let it touch you guys." He looked at the boys, now crowding around with offerings, a drawing, a toy, a question. For the first time in years, Ethan felt he was exactly where he belonged. Sophie's cozy Lincoln Park apartment buzzed with the chaotic energy of 4 boys, Liam, Noah, Elijah, and Owen, filling the space with chatter, questions, and the occasional crash of a toy. Ethan, sprawled on the bedroom rug, held Noah's upgraded toy car, a mess of taped-on parts that screamed childish ingenuity. Noah, eyes bright with pride, explained how he'd boosted it with a broken watch battery. "Ever thought about engineering?" Ethan asked, genuinely impressed. Noah's hazel eyes, so like his own, widened. "Like building robots and bridges?" "Exactly," Ethan said, a pang of pride hitting him at the spark in his son's gaze. Liam, watching with arms crossed, piped up, "But you work with crops or something, right? What do you know about robots?" Ethan laughed, a sound freer than he'd felt in ages. "I run an ag-tech company, Liam. We use tech to make farms smarter. I've tinkered with a few machines myself." Liam nodded, still skeptical, as if deciding whether Ethan was worth trusting. Sophie leaned against the doorframe, cradling a coffee mug she hadn't sipped. Ethan caught her eye as he stood to join her in the living room. "They like you," she said quietly. "But don't get cocky. They're kids, but they feel everything. Liam's waiting for you to prove you won't bail." Ethan nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "I get it. I'll prove it. To all of them." Before they could continue, his phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Photographer ID'd. Freelancer. Hired by someone tied to Greenfield Industries, your main rival. Digging deeper." Ethan showed Sophie, whose expression hardened. "Greenfield? Derek Lawson's company?" Ethan nodded. "They've been gunning for our merger with a Midwest co-op for months. A scandal like this would be their golden ticket." Sophie crossed her arms, her gaze fierce. "They're not using my boys to get to you, Ethan." He met her eyes, struck by her protective fire. "Not a chance. We'll handle this together." A shout from Owen broke the moment. He bounded in, clutching a baseball. "Dad, you said you play. Let's go outside." The word Dad hit Ethan like a warm wave. He glanced at Sophie, who gave a slight nod. "Okay, but just in the courtyard, and no running into the street." Minutes later, Ethan was in the building's concrete courtyard, surrounded by 4 boys laughing and shouting as they tried to outmaneuver him. Owen darted like lightning. Noah attempted wild pitches that ended in stumbles. Elijah seemed more interested in cloud shapes, and Liam played with a focus that screamed future pro. Ethan, who hadn't touched a baseball since high school, was surprised by how much fun he was having, sweat beading on his forehead. For a moment, the company, the merger, the photographer, Megan, it all vanished. It was just him and his sons, connected by something as simple as a game. Reality crashed back when they returned to the apartment, breathless and laughing. Sophie stood in the living room, pale, staring at her phone. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, instantly on edge. She turned the screen to him. A gossip site headline, Ag Tech Titan Ethan Caldwell, secret dad to quadruplets, with a grainy photo of him in the courtyard with the boys. The article speculated about his double life, naming Sophie as the mysterious ex-wife, and hinting the news could tank his company's merger. Ethan's anger flared, but Sophie spoke first, her voice steady. "This is too far. The boys can't be tabloid fodder." He nodded, already dialing Jack. "Get this site down. Find who leaked the photo." Jack's reply was curt. "On it, but heads up, Megan was spotted at Greenfield's HQ this morning." Ethan froze. "Megan? You sure?" "Dead sure," Jack said, and she didn't look happy. Sophie, listening on speaker, frowned. "She's in on this. What's her angle?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, thoughts racing. "No clue. Money. Maybe revenge. Megan never liked playing second fiddle, and last night, she saw my priorities shift." Sophie paused, processing. "I broke it off with her." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Not officially, but after last night it's clear my kids come first." Sophie studied him, as if searching for the truth behind his words. "They're not just yours, Ethan. They're ours. Every choice you make affects them." He felt the weight of her truth. "I know. I want to do this right. For them, and for you." The tension broke when Elijah shuffled in, clutching a new drawing. It showed a green field with 5 figures, 4 boys and a man playing baseball. "It's us today," he said shyly, handing it to Ethan. "You like it?" Ethan took the paper, his throat tight. I love it, Elijah. I'm keeping this forever. The boy's rare smile felt like a gift, and he scampered back to his room. Sophie watched, her gaze softening. He doesn't share his art with just anyone. You're winning him over. Ethan tucked the drawing into his pocket, vowing to earn that trust. That afternoon, Ethan returned to his Gold Coast penthouse, where Jack and his security team waited. The sleek, minimalist space, with its view of Lake Michigan, felt sterile compared to Sophie's warm apartment. Jack slid a tablet across the table, showing security footage. Megan entering Greenfield's headquarters, shaking hands with Derek Lawson. This doesn't prove anything, Ethan said, though the betrayal stung. Not yet, Jack replied, but we're tracking her communications. And the photographer? He confessed he was paid by a middleman linked to Greenfield. He doesn't know the top dog, but the money came from an offshore account. Ethan's fists clenched. Derek Lawson. He wants to tank me before the merger. Jack nodded. Likely. But he didn't expect you finding out about the kids. That's thrown a wrench in his plans. Ethan spent the afternoon in strategy sessions with his lawyers, plotting to contain the leak and protect his company's image. But his mind kept drifting. To the boys' faces, Elijah's drawing, Sophie's quiet strength. He realized with painful clarity that his empire, his wealth, his status, meant nothing without those ties. That night, Sophie called. Ethan, Liam asked if you're coming tomorrow. He wants to show you his science project at school. It's about solar panels. Ethan smiled, exhaustion fading. Tell him I wouldn't miss it. I'll be there. Sophie laughed, a sound he hadn't heard in years. I will. But Ethan, watch out for Megan. She doesn't strike me as someone who lets go easily. He nodded, voice firm. Don't worry, no one's hurting our family. The next morning, Ethan arrived at Liam's school, a brick building with a mural of the Chicago skyline. He squeezed into a too-small chair among other parents, watching Liam explain how solar panels convert sunlight using a model that lit up a tiny bulb. When Liam pointed to him and said, "That's my dad," Ethan's eyes stung. He recorded it all, knowing this moment outshone any boardroom win. But as he left the school, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Think you can shield your kids? The game's just starting. Attached was a photo of Sophie and the boys leaving their building that morning. Ethan's blood ran cold. Someone was watching and he had to move fast. The morning sun bathed Lincoln Park in a soft glow, but Ethan Caldwell felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The text he'd received after Liam's school presentation, "Think you can shield your kids, the game's just starting," looped in his mind like a warning siren. The attached photo of Sophie and the boys leaving their building was a stark reminder that the threat was closing in. He was driving back from the school, where he'd beamed with pride as Liam called him "my dad" while showing off his solar panel project. Now that joy clashed with a rising fury. Someone was targeting his family, and Ethan knew this was no longer just a corporate smear. He called Jack Reynolds, his security chief, eyes fixed on the road. "I want 24/7 protection on Sophie's building. No one gets in or out without a check. And trace that text. I need to know who's behind this." Jack, ever concise, replied, "Team's already moving. But Ethan, this is escalating. Greenfield doesn't play solo. Someone with bigger pull is calling shots." Ethan's jaw tightened. Derek Lawson. Or Megan. Or both. Find out, Jack. We're running out of time. At Sophie's apartment, Ethan found her in the living room, sorting Elijah's drawings while the boys played in their room. She read his tension before he spoke. "What happened?" she asked, setting the papers down. Ethan showed her the text and photo. Sophie's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide. "They're tailing us, Ethan. The boys. They can't live like this." He stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder, the gesture feeling natural. "It won't come to that. My team's on it. I'm here, Sophie. Nothing's touching you or them." She searched his eyes, as if testing his resolve. "I want to trust you," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But this isn't just about guards. The boys need a dad who's all in, not just for the crisis." Ethan nodded, her words hitting home. "I know. I'm learning, Sophie. One day at a time." Noah burst in, waving a dismantled walkie-talkie. "Dad, look, I think I can make it play music. You know how to fix this?" Ethan grinned, grateful for the distraction. He sat on the floor with Noah, poking at the tangle of wires. "Let's see what we can do, tinkerer." Liam appeared, clutching a notebook. "You liked my solar panel?" he asked, pride tinged with doubt. Ethan met his gaze. "Best project I've ever seen, Liam. You're a natural scientist." Liam's smile was worth everything, and he ran off to brag to his brothers. Sophie watched, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You're doing good, you know, but don't make promises you can't keep." Ethan held her gaze. "I won't. These boys are my world now." That afternoon, Ethan met Jack and Laura Mitchell, his trusted lawyer, at his Gold Coast penthouse. The stark, modern space felt cold compared to Sophie's lively home. Laura, a sharp woman with red-framed glasses, slid a tablet forward, displaying financial reports. "Greenfield's playing dirty," she said. "They're spreading rumors to spook your investors, saying your messy personal life could sink the merger. And we found irregular transfers in your company's accounts." Ethan leaned in. "What kind?" Laura pointed to a spreadsheet. "Small, consistent payments, adding up to millions over 2 years. All signed off by Megan as co-financial manager." Ethan's world tilted. "Megan? She had access, but I trusted her." Jack crossed his arms. "Looks like she trusted Derek Lawson more. We've got emails between them, talking opportunities tied to your downfall." The betrayal cut deep, but Ethan had no time to dwell. His phone rang. Sophie. "Ethan, you need to come now," she said, voice shaky. "Megan's here at the building. She's yelling at the doorman, demanding to see me." Ethan glanced at Jack, who grabbed the car keys. "We're on our way." At the building, Megan was at the entrance, face flushed, berating the doorman. "I know she's up there. That woman's ruining everything." Spotting Ethan, she charged forward, eyes blazing. "You think you can ditch me like this, after all I've done?" Ethan stayed calm. "Megan, this isn't about you, it's about my kids. And if you're working with Greenfield to sabotage me, I'll find out." She laughed, bitter and cold. "You're in over your head, Ethan. This is bigger than me." Before he could press, she spun and climbed into a waiting car, leaving a cloud of tension. Sophie, watching from a second-floor window, came down to meet Ethan. "She's unhinged," she said, arms crossed. "Is she dangerous?" Ethan shook his head. "She won't touch you. My team's watching." But Megan's words, "This is bigger than me," gnawed at him. He needed answers. Fast. That night, in Sophie's kitchen, with the boys asleep, they pored over financial documents Laura had sent. Sophie, once a data analyst, studied the numbers with laser focus. "Check this," she said, pointing to a laptop screen. "These transfers follow a pattern. Every 15th, 2% of export profits go to a Cayman Islands account. It's subtle, but it's millions." Ethan leaned in, their shoulders brushing. "How'd you spot that?" Sophie shrugged, a small smile. "I've always been good with numbers. You just never noticed." He chuckled, guilt tugging at him. In their marriage, he'd been too buried in work to see her strengths. A soft noise came from the hall. Elijah appeared in superhero pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear. "Bad dream," he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Ethan looked to Sophie, who nodded for him to take the lead. Hesitant, he approached his son. "Want to tell me about it?" Elijah took Ethan's hand, the trust in the gesture melting him. "Big monster, but I ran fast." Ethan smiled, tucking him back into bed. "Monsters don't mess with brave kids like you." He spun a quick tale about a night slaying shadows until Elijah drifted off. Back in the kitchen, Sophie watched him, her expression unreadable. "You're becoming the dad they need," she said, almost reluctantly. Ethan's pulse quickened, but his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Jack. "Found the offshore account. Tied to a Greenfield board member, but it traces higher. Megan's meeting Lawson now." Ethan showed Sophie. "They're tightening the noose," she said, worried. "We need to stay ahead." The next day, Ethan took the boys to a nearby park, security discreetly in place. As Owen and Noah chased a kite, Liam sidled up, serious. "You ever fought real bad guys?" he asked. Ethan thought of Greenfield, Megan, the threats. "A few," he said. "The worst ones try to hurt the people you love." Liam nodded, as if he understood more than a kid should. In that moment, Ethan knew his fight wasn't just for power or profit. It was for these boys, for Sophie, for a shot at redemption. But the game, as the text warned, was only beginning. The breeze swept through Lincoln Park, carrying the sound of Owen and Noah's laughter as they tugged at a red kite dancing in the sky. Ethan Caldwell sat on a worn bench, watching his sons with a mix of warmth and unease. Liam, beside him, was still mulling over their talk about bad guys, while Elijah, a few feet away, sketched the clouds with delicate strokes. The scene felt perfect, but Ethan's mind was tangled in the threat that loomed larger with each passing hour. The text after Liam's school presentation, "Think you can shield your kids, the game's just starting," hung like a storm cloud. Learning that Megan, his ex-girlfriend, was entangled with Derek Lawson and Greenfield Industries, his rival, raised the stakes. And her cryptic warning, "This is bigger than me," hinted at a hidden player with enough power to orchestrate this personal attack. Ethan glanced at the boys, his heart tight with the need to keep them safe, and vowed no one would take them from him. Sophie approached, carrying a thermos of lemonade and a bag of homemade cookies for the kids. She wore a baseball cap, her face sun-kissed, and Ethan couldn't help noticing how at ease she seemed here, as if the park was an extension of her quiet strength. "They're loving this," she said, handing him a cup. "But you've got that look, like you're planning a battle." He gave a wry smile. "Maybe I am. This Nikolai Petrov guy. He's not just an investor, Sophie. He contacted you 5 years ago, right after our divorce. That's no coincidence." Sophie's brow furrowed as she sat beside him on the grass. "I remember him. Polished but pushy, wanted me for some hush-hush data project. I said no because I was pregnant. Why's he after you now?" Ethan sipped the lemonade, his thoughts racing. Maybe it's not just me, maybe it's us or what we stand for. Before Sophie could reply, Liam ran up, panting. "Dad, you gotta see Owen. He almost caught a squirrel." Ethan ruffled his son's hair, grinning. "Sounds like he's more sprinter than rancher." Liam laughed, but his eyes, so like Ethan's, held an unspoken question. "You gonna live with us someday, right?" The question caught Ethan off guard. He glanced at Sophie, who busied herself with the thermos. "I want to be with you guys always, Liam," he said carefully. "We'll figure it out, okay?" Liam nodded, content for now, and dashed back to his brothers. That night, back at Sophie's Lincoln Park apartment, Ethan and Sophie sat in the living room after the boys were asleep. The coffee table was buried under Laura's financial reports and Sophie's meticulous notes. Ethan shared a new text from Jack. "Petrov's tied to a group that tried to buy your company a decade ago. He's using Greenfield as a front, but it's personal. Megan's deeper in than we thought. She signed deals with Petrov directly." Sophie's face drained of color. "Megan knew about Petrov all along? She's been playing you from the start?" Ethan shook his head, anger laced with betrayal. "Looks like it. She used my trust to siphon millions and set this up. But Petrov's the mastermind. I need to know why he's fixated on us." Sophie flipped through the papers, pausing at an old document. "Look at this. An email from Petrov to Charles Bennett, years back. He mentions the Caldwell legacy and settling old scores. Any idea what that means?" Ethan frowned, racking his brain. "My dad had enemies. Petrov might have been one, but his name never came up back then. Maybe he's tied to my family's past in a way I don't know." A knock at the door startled them. Ethan tensed, but it was just the doorman with a delivery. Sophie opened the envelope and her face went white. Inside was a photo of the boys playing in the park that morning with a handwritten note. "Time's running out, Caldwell. Hand over the company or lose it all." Ethan snatched the photo, heart racing. They were there in the park. How? Sophie gripped his hand, her voice shaky but resolute. "We're not giving in, Ethan. They don't get to win." He nodded, already calling Jack. "Beef up security. Find Petrov, now." Jack's voice was grim. "We're close. He's in Chicago, holed up at a ritzy hotel in the Loop. But watch your back. He's got eyes everywhere." Hanging up, Ethan looked at Sophie, resolve hardening. "I'm going after him, but first I'm making sure you're safe." Sophie's eyes flashed. "I'm not some damsel, Ethan. I'm their mum. We fight this together." The next morning, Ethan dropped the boys at school, a security team discreetly in place. As Liam bragged to a friend about his solar panel project, Ethan got a call from Laura. "We've got something big," she said, voice tight. "Petrov's not just an investor. He's a distant cousin of your dad's, cut out of the family before you were born. He thinks the company's rightfully his. Ethan's world rocked. A cousin? Why'd no one tell me? Laura sighed. Your dad buried it. Petrov got kicked out after trying to scam the business. Now he wants revenge, using Greenfield, Megan, and Bennett to do it. Ethan's anger surged. So it's personal. He wants to erase my legacy because he thinks it's his. Laura confirmed. Exactly. And he knows about the boys. That's why he's hitting your family. That afternoon, Ethan and Sophie met Jack at a quiet diner in Wicker Park. Jack slid a dossier across the table, photos of Petrov with Megan, encrypted emails between him and Bennett, and a detailed plan to derail Ethan's merger at the next shareholder meeting. He's banking on you being too rattled to show up, Jack said. If you're off your game, he'll push the investors to sell to Greenfield. Ethan's fists tightened. Then we'll be there, and we'll expose him. Sophie, scanning the dossier, looked up. What about the boys? We can't risk them. Ethan took her hand, the first time he'd done so since their divorce. They'll be safe, I promise. The touch lingered, and Sophie didn't pull away, their shared look carrying an unspoken vow. That night Ethan stayed at Sophie's, crashing on the couch to stay close. He woke to Elijah beside him, holding a new drawing, 5 figures in a boat, braving a storm. It's us, Elijah said shyly. You're steering, Dad. Ethan hugged him, throat tight. Then we'll face the storm together, okay? When the boys woke, Ethan took them for a picnic at Millennium Park, a brief escape before the showdown. As Owen and Noah tossed a frisbee, Liam approached. You'll beat the bad guys, right? Ethan grinned, ruffling his hair. With you guys backing me, yeah? Liam nodded, solemn. We trust you. The shareholder meeting loomed the next day. Ethan, Sophie, and Jack spent the night prepping, building a case from the dossier. At dawn, Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror. He wasn't just a tech mogul anymore. He was a father, a partner, a man ready to fight for his family. In the boardroom, with Chicago's skyline as a backdrop, Ethan faced Petrov, who appeared as Greenfield's special guest. The man, tall with icy eyes and a thick accent, smirked like a shark. You can't save your company and your family, Caldwell. Pick one. Ethan, with Sophie beside him, shot back. I choose both. He laid out the dossier exposing Petrov's frauds, Megan's betrayal, and Bennett's role. The shareholders, stunned, voted against Greenfield, and Petrov was escorted out, vowing revenge. Megan in the room tried to slip away, but Jack stopped her. Game's over, Megan, Ethan said, voice steady. She sneered, bitter. You think this ends here? Petrov doesn't forget. But Ethan was done listening. He turned to Sophie, her hand in his, and knew the real win was right there. Months later, Ethan and Sophie were at a Wisconsin ranch, their temporary home while they renovated a bigger house for the family. The boys tore through the fields, and Elijah handed Ethan a final drawing, 5 figures in a home, a sun shining above. A happy ending? Ethan asked. Elijah grinned. It's the start. That night, under the stars, Ethan proposed to Sophie, not with a ring but a promise. I want to build it all again with you and them. Sophie, tears in her eyes, said yes, and their kiss sealed not just a rekindled love, but a family that had weathered the storm. Petrov, jailed for his schemes, was a fading shadow, but the biggest secret came weeks later. Sophie revealed she'd kept a document from their divorce, proving Ethan's father's innocence in a scandal Petrov had engineered. That paper, safeguarded by her, had been the key to dismantling Petrov's empire. Ethan, flawed, realized Sophie had always been his greatest ally, even when he didn't deserve it. They laughed, wrapped in each other's arms, as the boys' shouts echoed in the distance, and Ethan knew love, not power, was the true Caldwell legacy. I hope you enjoyed the story, full of emotion, secrets, and redemption. Now we want to know, on a scale of 0 to 10, what rating would you give this adventure? Leave your review and share what you thought. Do you think she should forgive him? Like the video and subscribe to support our channel.